Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the basics of geometry, some of our fundamental terminology. These 6 words right here. Now we're going to be going over definitions on what they are, and we're going to talk about how to name them. So 2 different parts. Some of the definitions may seem just a little bit logical and pretty simple, but it's really important that we know how to name them and recognize what we're talking about when we see those names. A point is probably the most straightforward one. Let's be honest, it barely has a definition. Just a single point. Like you don't want to say a single point because point's already in the, you don't want to use the word in the definition, but it's like a single instance, a single spot, a single something. There's no good definition for it. Let me be real with you. It's just that right there, that point, right? Now what happens is every time we have a point, we want to give it a name in the form of a letter. So what I would do is I would say, I got that point right there, but instead of saying that point right there, I'm gonna say point A. Or maybe if I was referring to this point, I would say point B. That way we can be pretty specific with what it is we're talking about in A or point B, instead of pointing and kind of saying that one. Now a line is what you get when you put 2 points together, or you connect 2 points, right? A line is made up from 2 points and it extends infinitely in both directions. So what it's saying is, if we have 2 points, such as A and B here, then if we connected those, we would connect them with a line like this. And it would have these little arrows at the end. And those arrows signify that's going on forever, not just to the end of the whiteboard, not just to the end of the room. It's going to go all the way to the end of space and time as we know it, infinitely. Right? And it's going to do that same thing in this direction. But we get that line by connecting those 2 points. The way that we name the line is from any 2 points on the line. Now the points that we have kind of highlighted here for us are point A and B. So we would name it using those. A, B. But we also want to write a little thing above that AB to signify it is a line. And that thing we want to write looks like this. A little tiny line up there with arrows on each end of it, signifying it is a line that extends infinitely on either side of A and B. And it goes through A and B. Now, I mean, technically, if you wanted to put a 3rd point up here, if you wanted to say point C, then you could still name this line AC. That's totally okay, as long as you're using any 2 points on the line and you have this little designation that it goes on forever in each direction. Well, that's a line. Our next definition is a plane. I'll be honest with you, a plane is probably our most complex topic of these 6. However, in sense of what you need to know in a geometry class, it's kind of probably the least important. So if it's a little hard to grasp, you're not alone in that, and don't get too stressed out about it. But a plane is made up of any 3 points. So let's just put 3 points over here. This one, and this one. Now I know you're probably thinking in your head, oh, I'm going to connect those and make a triangle, right? You could, but you could also make a plane. A plane, as a concept, is like an infinitely extending flat surface. So I'm actually going to write that down here. I'm going to write those terms. Infinite flat surface. So it's kind of like saying, I have this flat surface behind me that's the whiteboard, right? But if I imagined that whiteboard didn't just stop at the edges of it, and it extended on forever, straight up into the sky, straight off to either side of me, straight down, endlessly, that's a plane. It's kind of like saying the ground underneath your feet. If you just consider that a flat surface and it goes forever that way and forever that way, forever there and forever there, that's a plane as well. Now it does need to be flat. I know the ground, obviously, we got some hills or some valleys. It's not exactly a plane, but you get the idea. And anything can be a plane. It doesn't even have to be a physical surface. I could just say, imagine a flat surface right here in the air that goes infinitely in every direction. That's a plane. All I have to do is designate 3 points on that plane. So if I said, hey, I have this giant wall, we're going to talk about the plane in the sense of this whiteboard or this wall, and I have point D, point E, and point F, then I say, well, these 3 points are all on that flat plane. So I can name it plane DEF. Now the term plane is in the naming system for this. We don't have a fancy little symbol or anything like that to denote that it's a plane. We just literally write it out. And again, this is one of those concepts you're not going to see a whole lot, but it is important to know it exists. A segment is our next part. A segment is a portion of a line. So let's imagine this line that we drew up here. Actually, I'll just redraw a new one down here. Why not? Let's say we have this line. I'm going to have point G and point H. Now I said a line technically could go straight through those 2 points and on in every direction in between. But what if I just said the line only goes from G to F? It doesn't continue on forever that way. It doesn't continue on forever this way. It just stops. It begins at G and it stops at F. That's a segment. It's a portion of a line. You name segments just like you would lines, using where they start and where they stop. So G and H. And then to denote it's a segment, you put a little line over the top of it, but we don't use the arrows on either side. Those arrows for a line say it goes on forever. Not having the arrows says it only goes from G to H. Sorry about the cut there. The iPad recording this fell, so figured you didn't want to watch a tumble. So this reads line segment GH though. Now endpoints is our next definition. This actually goes along with line segments really well because an endpoint is where, I know my marker's dying, I'm sorry. An endpoint is, I'll just write it in red, where a segment begins or ends. So in this case, like G and H are both endpoints. Even though the line kind of started at G, and we might think of it as a starting point, it technically is an endpoint because it's at either end of the line. Now, an endpoint we still designate with just the letter it has. We would still just say G, or we would still just say H. The fact of the matter is, being an endpoint doesn't change it from being a point. It's still just a point. However, we consider it an endpoint, and it's kind of a more specific type of point if it is at the start or stop, beginning or end of a segment. Finally, we have a ray. A ray is I'm going to use the word very loosely here, a line that only extends infinitely in one direction. Meaning that if we have a couple points, right, like G and H, currently this is a segment because it stops at those endpoints. But if instead of stopping at an endpoint, it just went on forever in that direction, it would be a ray, because it is only extending infinitely. It only has that arrow on one side of the line. Now it could go infinitely in the other direction. It could look like this. That would also be a ray, because it's going infinitely to the left. But if it goes infinitely in both directions, it's a line. So the deal is with a ray is it has to have one endpoint. It has a point where it starts, quote unquote, that endpoint, and then it goes infinitely in another direction. What you want to do with a ray is you want to name it starting with its endpoint and then another point it goes through. So if it looked like this, I'm going to use the first example we had. Its starting point is G, and then it also goes through H. And then we're going to write a line, a little symbol over it. You guessed it. It's going to look like this. A straight line with only one arrow, and that's our designation of ray. So I know this is a lot of definitions, a lot of information, a lot of naming conventions that I'm throwing out at you. But if you have any questions on it, drop them below. I'm more than happy to answer them or try to clarify some of these definitions in any way I need to. Otherwise, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.